Greetings. This is the overview video, introductory video, if you would, for Geography 204, which is Geography of Hawaii course for fall 2020 at Chaminade University. We're one of the few places, obviously, that teach this. I don't think any reason anyone outside of Hawaii would. I think UH and us are about the only two places that teach this class. And it's based on a very particular thing, and that is geography, which has to be one of the most totally vague disciplines in the world. As a geographer, I can testify to that. Since geography is looking at the relationship of people and the world around them in all sorts of different ways. This particular course is regional based, which is typical of many geography classes. So it's actually based by location or place, if you would, and covers a lot of the different sort of subsets of what geographers look at within the context of location. So what we're looking at is both the place that is the Hawaiian Islands and also the oceans around it, and also then the people on those islands and the relationship that people have had and have and will have in the future with that reality. So that's what the class looks like. And so what we're looking at is a combination of physical landscape, what's oftentimes called the built or cultural landscape, what people do with the landscape, and in some ways also what you might call the imaginary or mental landscape, the way that we actually view the place. This is really important in Hawaii's case, as we can see with the COVID issue right now, and the fact that the concept or the driving need of tourism has to do with a set of perceptions of Hawaii, rather than necessarily any familiarity or understanding or data, if you want to call it, about Hawaii. A good example would be the whole issue of the various beaches and green sea turtles. As someone who's swam and dived with turtles a bunch over the years, they're just smelly, large things. But for tourists from many parts of the world, especially mainly the United States, the sea turtle becomes almost like this magical creature. And unless you understand the fact that it has to do with perception and not reality, or if you would, perception drives reality, which is a big discussion point this semester. Our perception of things drives the way that we see and interact and use them, which is really visible here in Hawaii just by virtue of a bunch of factors we'll be looking at. So that's how the course actually, sort of the general theme, if you want to call it that. Let's take a quick look at the syllabus then. Okay, so this gives you how the course is set up. We're lucky in that, there's a really good book. There's actually a whole series of books that just came out in the last couple of years on basically looking at different aspects of what you might call political or social or perceptual geography of Hawaii. Most of them dealing with a Hawaiian point of view, which is incredibly useful simply because even though it's been around, no one's bothered to write it up. So, except for specialists like me, there's almost no knowledge of it. So it's sad to say. So a bunch of stuff have come up. I might have gone with even a brand new text. In fact, Ingersoll's book that I've got down the recommended, that's an absolutely fantastic look at Hawaiian concepts of knowledge and place and person, and how that's different. And not only Hawaiian, but actually just Polynesian, in some ways, a sort of Pacific Islander in general, and how that's a different alternative to sort of the classic sort of Western mindset. Yeah, I won't get into more. There's a couple of other options that I'll probably give you guys early in the semester in terms of other really good new readings. Beamer's is quite good. What it actually talks about isn't all that actually close to the title. I'm not really sure how they came up with that. But what it's actually looking at is, again, this idea of different ways of looking at the land around you, or different ways of looking at the landscape, and looking at the sort of traditional and also modern ethnic Hawaiian view of the world, in contrast to the sort of classic academic Western American, whatever phrase you want, globalized view of the world. Very good read. I think you'll find that really interesting. The second one is, since I'm biased, is the one where I've compiled a lot of Thrum's articles. George Thrum comes over, I don't know if he actually comes over if he's born here. His dad comes over in the 1830s, 1840s from Australia. So his dad was one of the convicts that's sent there. His dad comes over here as a shipwright. So Thrum grows up on the waterfront down here in Honolulu. So he's, on one hand, he's haole. On the other hand, he's not part of the haole establishment because he's from the wrong place. And also his dad, by virtue of their background, he's always sort of suspect. So he grows up speaking English, but also speaking Hawaiian. He becomes a publisher and a printer. He's the guy that prints, everything, business cards, wedding invitations, all that stuff. That, also, I think eventually buys or starts the Star Bulletin. So he's a publisher, becomes a newspaper publisher. In the 1870s, he makes some extra money, comes up with the almanac. And he very quickly starts throwing articles based on his interest, which was traditional Hawaiian society and sort of Hawaiians in general. He starts throwing little articles into the almanac of that stuff, I think probably to generate extra readers or to get people reading it more. He invites other folks, including Nakawina, to contribute articles. And by the 1880s, 1890s, it becomes a major repository. You have to remember, these things are coming out every year, like they're annuals, of new things or things that people are writing about, Hawaiian society or change in Hawaii, etc. Now, the reason this is an important resource is that you have to remember, for example, when he's writing about the overthrow or the 1895 counter-revolution here in Hawaii, he's writing that in 1895. So when you're looking at these articles, you're seeing them from the standpoint of someone 120 years ago. This is hugely different than looking at Beamer's or any other work that's written in, say, 2010 or 2020 about what happened in 1893. On one hand, you can do a summary overview because it's 120 years later, and you can say, well, this is what they should have done. On the other hand, this is what they should have done is a lot easier to say in hindsight than it is when you're standing knee deep in it. Good example would be, see, COVID-19, wearing masks, and the whole attitude about this. It's very hard to figure out what's the right thing to do when you're in it. I suspect 20 or 40 years from now, people are going to be like shaking their heads and going like, dude, what the hell were you guys thinking? Because in hindsight, it becomes really clear what you should have done. When you're in it, it's not at all clear what you should have done because you haven't figured it out yet. You can't see in the future. So the Thrums works are very, very useful because they give you an insight into this place at the time these things were happening versus being able to look at them now. There's also some really cool, very short articles that talk about like street names and vanished buildings and stuff, which you'll get. Most of the articles are really, really short. You're not expected to read the volumes. Most of these you're reading maybe, each article is maybe like a page and a half. They're basically the same as what you'd see in a newspaper article. So they're really short. The ones I've picked I think are really interesting and you find them really useful. They're also great if you get involved in trivial pursuit arguments here because you'll find that you have a bunch of stuff that I can guarantee almost no one else does. So I think you'll like the Thrums. Just don't read the whole volumes. They were never intended for that. Read the parts that I tell you to read in the syllabus. The last is a PDF. This was a fantastic work. They did one on Maui too. It was done by Bishop Museum, where they actually went and, I guess because it was cheaper, they actually went in many cases actually pen and inked out different locations. So it's basically a car drive tour of the geology of the island of Oahu. And it sort of amazes me that one, they've never reprinted this or put it on like a website or something like that, because it was beautifully done. It's absolutely fascinating. All of a sudden, when you're going by some places, you go by a lot, like say, Sandy Beach or something like that, you'd see it totally differently after you've looked at this. It's a very easy read. I think you really, really enjoy it. It's actually pretty short, so like, 40, 50 pages, something like that. Again, I don't know why no one's ever updated it, but that's really sort of typical stuff here in Hawaii. Stuff gets done, everyone goes, oh wow, and sort of drop it. I've got a recommended book, Max one on Hawaii tourism. If you're into tourism or you're going to be involved in something that's related to it, then read it. It's sort of the current text on that. Having said that, it's a useful resource, but don't get it and don't read it unless there's some way you think you're going to get involved in tourism in your future or contemporarily now. Okay, how we're doing the class. We're doing the class, and I suppose the technical term now is called hybrid. I'm doing this in late July, so I have no idea what's going to be happening by late August, but theoretically classes will be available so people can actually sit down in a room and come to class. Having said that, especially in a lot of classes, I see absolutely no way that everyone could fit in the class with 6-foot distancing. So I suspect a fair chunk of the class will actually not be physically in the room. I'm not at all a fan of asynchronous learning. I use it in the digital anthropology classes and stuff that I teach online regularly. but I don't find that it gives the same ability to interact spontaneously that you get when you're actually doing synchronous interaction. So therefore, in this class, if you're not physically in the classroom, I expect you to be on Zoom, which I'll have set up, so that everyone in the class is actually there at the same time. They're just not physically necessarily in the room. So you're going to have to set aside the class times to be in class, whether you're somewhere else in front of a computer slash, video feed or whatever. I don't particularly care. I'm not interested that much whether you're in class or not, but I do expect everyone to be together at the times we're having class so that we can interact and talk about the stuff that we're going over. I will record the Zoom sessions so that for some reason you can watch them later, but you're not going to get anywhere near the same experience. And if you persistently only do it that way without some really good excuse, I'm not going to be happy. Because you're not going to get what you actually need out of the class. You're just going to be watching something. If that's the case, then just watch some YouTube videos on something. So, to do the class the way that it has to be done, you have to have the time blocked out when the class is scheduled to be engaged in the class. So that's the way that works. So you have to know how to use Zoom, which I'm sort of assuming everyone does. But if you haven't, then you've got, whatever amount of time. And then of course the help desk will help you out with all this stuff. We use Canvas as our educational learning platform, for better or worse. So you've got to have your own Canvas account, which theoretically you're going to have, well, you're going to have to have that for everything anyway. So if you don't have a Canvas account, I don't know if I'd panic, but I definitely check with the help desk. I think they give that to you guys, for some reason, I think they only give it to you guys when the semester starts. Don't ask me. But I'll try to find a way to post this as a YouTube video and send it to everyone who's registered for the class as soon as I can, so you get as much of a heads up. So I think that's it. Technically, there's nothing challenging. Let's see, Grady. Oh, yeah. Sorry. This particular class, along with the Hawaii class, the Cultures of Hawaii class, Candace Sakuda, who's had a service learning, and I started up a project this last summer where we were looking at, well, originally this came out of a project where St. Louis asked us to get involved in helping them with the agricultural planting they've been doing down near the rifle range. As that started to evolve in the spring semester, then of course everything sort of fell apart in March. One of the side effects of that was that we realized that if we're going to talk about planting here in this part of the valley, you sort of have to know what the hell's going on with the stream and all that stuff. In other words, you have to know the conditions. And most importantly, it really then helps to go back and talk and see what's going on in the back of the valley where there's still people that are farming back there commercially. So what we realized is we needed a much bigger project that would actually look at what is Palolo? How do people see it? People that are from Palolo, what does that mean? How do they see their world around them? How do they view Palolo? And especially in the back of the valley, how do people view the stream? What does the stream mean to them? If you're a farmer, how can you be a farmer in the island of Oahu in 2020? What is being done? What are the potentials that maybe aren't being explored? So all of this sort of makes up the Palolo Pukene project. You're going to have to do this. I traditionally don't like making people do service learning, but I'm going to assign it. There's enough freedom in here for you to find something that you can do. I've included the current draft proposal in the syllabus, so you can actually see where we're thinking is going right now. As a combination of us, St. Louis School, UH Manoa might end up being a player as of this morning. I don't know. This is late July, and I can't tell you probably till the day classes start who's actually going to be involved and what we're going to be doing. I do want to start doing the field survey of the stream and stream environs in the fall semester. Since there's all sorts of social distancing you can do when you're slogging down the middle of a stream. It's not a problem. Mosquitoes are a problem, but social distancing isn't. So, at least right now, I'm planning that we'll actually be one of the options will be actually physically out collecting data, specimens, etc. In the fall. So if you're interested in something like that, that's one of the options that should be available, especially if you're an environmental studies major. It would be sort of a no-brainer in terms of a direction possibly to go. So anyways, we're going to be doing that. So think of that in terms of the alternative to a research paper, something like that will be the Palolo vocabulary project. The main coursework is what I call critical thinking exercises, which are basically, as we go through the chunk of the semester, we're going through a set of material. I'm going to require that you, during each of that chunk of material, that you actually think and research in more depth some aspect of what we covered or just, skipped over, that you find useful or more interesting. So I want you to do something that for some reason you find more interesting than just the rest of the stuff. And so you have to do 6 of these. Again, I've got the template in the syllabus, so it should be pretty straightforward. So that, I think it'll make a little more sense when the semester starts, but to me, it's pretty straightforward. Anyways, last two parts. I always require people to do a Waikiki field trip. This is always really, people hate doing it. They try to stall it. When they've done it, they're all like, oh yeah, that was really useful and I really sort of got something out of it. Well, we can't do the Waikiki field trip. I suppose you could go walk Waikiki, but I don't know. It's sort of iffy for a bunch of reasons. So what I'm going to do is have you guys do it in Google Earth, where you can go into Street View and you can actually walk down the streets. Won't be the same. You're going to be missing a lot of the context. But on the other hand, in this day and age, using Google or Street View is something that a lot of geographers like myself use in a lot of contexts. So, join the crowd. So again, the Street View, the field trip is actually described in detail in the syllabus, in terms of like where I want you to go, what I want you to look at, etc. So it should be pretty straightforward. So we'll try it virtually. If for some reason you decide that you want to actually go through Waikiki, you can drive through Waikiki, but I still want you doing the virtual one, because if you're driving through Waikiki, you can't see anything because you're so busy trying not to hit something. So just doing it is not relevant. Getting something out of it is really the key. So it's not very onerous. I think you'll find it sort of interesting. So again, do the field trip. Last is reaction papers. There's a fair number of videos in the class, and when I show you, I want you to watch a video, I'll give you a set of questions. A reaction paper is that basically answer the questions that I asked. You get graded on the answering the questions. You do not get graded on the length of the answers. So just do them. They give you a reason for watching the videos. Otherwise, you're like what the hell, bored or what? Why should I begin watching this? Well, that's what the questions do. So just do them. So I think that's it. Yeah, I don't see anything else major here. So, this will be posted as a YouTube video, obviously. So you'll get that as a link. And so hope to see you in, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks.